Hello creators, today I wanted to go over some simple masking techniques using the latest Luminar Neo feature Mask AI. The first technique is something I call selective coloring or color reveal, and this is kind of an old school method. Some may say it's outdated, but I don't care. This photo is just a stock photo that I pulled online, and basically what we're going to do is go into Essentials, black and white, and convert it to black and white. Next we want to click on mask and click on brush. Make sure your erase option is selected, and you can adjust your brush size using the bracket keys. So I can simply increase it or decrease it with my bracket keys. And I would say in terms of masking, the brush tool is something you're going to use very often, either to fine tune your mask selections or to simply mask out shapes that you can't with the other masking features. So I'm simply going to start with a fairly big brush here and just simply brush over the areas that I want to get rid of. And then to refine the selection, we're going to use a smaller brush and zoom in super close here. What I personally like to do is kind of just do an outline around the edges of the subject. Now, if you have straight lines, this is a great tip that one of our members pointed out that is available in other programs that Neo now has. And simply if you start at a point here, like if I click this point and I hold shift and click to this point, you see that it's going to create a straight line, and that'll help me with my refinement. So I can do the same here. I'm just going to follow along the edges here. And then when I get to a point where it's kind of a straight line, I can just simply go to this point, hold shift and click, and it's going to create this nice straight line for me. Of course, I could be more accurate, zoom in, and clean up these edges here. Yes, this is a lot of manual work, but it's also good exercise and practice to get used to using the brush mask. So I'm going to simply do this all around the flower here, all around the rose, and then fill in the rest as we go. So I'm going to go through this. Obviously, I'll speed it up in the video. So as I zoom out here, you see that I've outlined that mask. So now I could really just use the brush to fill in the areas that need filling in. As we erase from the mask, we're revealing the color underneath. As you see the final result, you can see that the color is just showing on the rose while the rest of the picture is still in black and white. Now, should you make any mistakes, let's say I over brushed there, you can simply just go back to paint and paint that back in. So this is the beauty of masks, that it's not permanent and you can always correct it. And the whole purpose of masking is to isolate certain areas of the image so that you can work on that specific area. Mask AI also has the ability to recognize transport objects, so motorcycles, cars, airplanes. So I have another stock photo here, and what we're going to do is change the color of the red motorcycle to a different color. So we're going to go ahead under Essentials, Color, Masking. We're going to this time use AI Mask for this. As it analyzes the image, you're going to see that you have this option for transport. If we click on that, it makes a fairly decent selection. Now, you see in the background, it's also selected the motorcycle in the background. So first, we're going to go back to this section here, Show Mask, and we're going to go back to the brush and we're going to delete it. So make sure you're in Erase, and we're going to delete this one because we want to work on the main motorcycle here. Now, typically for an image like this, I would painstakingly correct the mask, but I'm just going to do this super quick and just delete it from the areas that I don't want. But again, we'll go over how to refine the selection by using the brush. This is actually very simple to do. And while the mask selection is still made, we're going to go into Adjustments. Then let's open up the HSL tab here and go to the bottom where you see Hue Shift. And as I slide this, you're going to see the colors change. Now, obviously, it's affecting some of the areas where we don't want the mask. But again, we can clean that up if we're being very, very exact. But as you can see, the selection is pretty decent and we can play around with the colors here. So let's say I wanted to change this to like a purple color. Maybe more, yeah, let's maybe something like that. Now, assuming you're happy with the color, again, I would go back into masking. Make sure that I have a brush selected, and then I would simply just erase the areas where I don't want the mask to show. Anyway, you get my point. So again, as I've said before, you may have to still fine tune with the brush so that your selection is more accurate. In some circumstances compared to something like Lightroom, I find Lightroom's selections are a bit more accurate, but Neo's just a bit more flexible, and it's also hit and miss. Like for animals, for example, there is no option for animals. So if I were to use AI mask here, sometimes it'll recognize it if you use architecture. This particular photo, it doesn't do a good selection, but there's no other option for animals. Whereas in Lightroom, if you use the object selection, at least from what I've tested in terms of my photos, it picks the animals out pretty well. So let me know if you want to see those comparisons between Lightroom and Neo. Now, I'm not saying one is better than the other. Both have their advantages and disadvantages, but it's definitely something to be aware of. This third technique I'm going to show you is utilizing the Mask AI to isolate certain areas of your image to do specific things. For example, I'm going to head over to Essentials again, and under Structure, we're going to go ahead and click on the mask, click AI Masking, and I'm going to use the mountain selection here. And I'm going to select most of the mountains here, which is great. I will adjust the mask here by using the brush. And we're going to erase the areas here because we're going to do something with this later. So it's just going to focus on the mountain area here, even some parts here. And you don't have to be terribly accurate if you're using something like Structure AI or the Details function, because again, these are very subtle adjustments I'm going to make. So we're going to click on adjustments, and I'm going to zoom in here so you can see what's going on here. And basically what I want to do is just give the small details here a little bit more detail. And by doing Structure AI, like if I bring this all the way up, you see how over detailed it looks now. So I'm going to bring this down to, let's try around 46. Give it a little bit of a boost, say 16. And if we look at the before and after, it just enhances those finer details much nicer. So if I back off here and we do a before and after, see all that detail in that image start to pop out. Now I could do the same thing with Structure for the trees. So again, we're going to click on AI Mask. We're going to click on Flora. And for the most part, it's going to select all the trees here. It does miss some. So again, you can simply add to the mask here by brushing it in. And then we can also delete the selections up here. But for the most part, it does a pretty good job. And then we're going to bring the slider up. You see, let me zoom in here. You see, as I do it, how much more detail comes out of those trees. So again, if we do a quick before and after, you see now the details really come out. Next, I'm going to head over to landscape and play with the golden hour and foliage enhancer. Once again, we'll use AI masking for this. Click on mountains, and we can actually stack these selections. So if I wanted to do flora as well, we can select them at the same time. I'm going to brush in the areas that's missed here at the bottom. Obviously, this is an easier selection to make because we're combining the trees and the mountains there. Now, when we head over to adjustments, we're going to use foliage enhancer. This feature is kind of handy because it basically takes all the greenery in the scene and gives it a little bit more oomph, a little more pop. right? So if I slide this all the way right, you see how more saturated those greens are. That's a little too much, obviously, but I do want them to pop out a little bit, you know, a bit more contrast, a bit more color, just like that. The golden hour is like temperature. It'll mimic that golden hour lighting. So again, if I slide it up, you see it gives it more of an orangey yellow hue, right? So we're just going to do a little bit of that. For this particular image, I probably might want to use the sky replacement function here. I'm just going to throw in something really quick, see what looks good. Yeah, I kind of like that. And but I'm not going to go too much into sky replacement. I have a dedicated video for that coming up, so stay tuned for that. And then lastly, I'm just going to do an overall adjustment to the whole image, bring out the accent AI. Now it looks to me a little too saturated, so I'm just going to bring it down just a tad here. So if we do a quick before and after, you see this photo is fairly bland and dull. It was probably shot in RAW. I don't know, it's a stock image. And after a little bit of editing, now it really has some nice pop and color to it. So I hope those tips were useful for you. As always, if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. As I said before in previous videos though, we need a better way to refine the selections. And I find with all the other features, including Mask AI, it has a problem with animals. And hopefully if Skylum is watching, please know a lot of us photographers have pets or are into bird photography or animal photography. And if we can't have smart selections for animals, that's a whole genre of people that you're isolating. Like, I love that all these features focus on people because that's what I focus on the most. But I would love to have, say, portrait bokeh for animal, or have a selection in Mask AI specifically for animal. I think that would be well received by all the Luminar Neo users. But if you're more into portrait editing, be sure to check out this video on Luminar Neo's portrait editing features. But for now, in the meantime, until next video, my friends, I'll see you when I see you.